Yo, this is Steve Bloom, and you're watching Moana Nui Podcast. We'll be starting soon. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Veronica Taylor, and from myself and Ash Ketchum, I just want to say, Moana Nui, I choose you!
Aloha, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Moana Nui Podcast. We're so very excited for you to be part of today's episode as we dive into our After Dark panel. We have one other panelist that will be joining us shortly, a little technical issues, and hopefully our third panelist, work is keeping him, so hopefully he'll be able to join us a little bit later on. But of course, we want to keep the conversation going for all of you. And of course, we are going to be talking about the new DC animated film that just was released in late July, the Green Lantern animation, which is called Green Lantern Beware My Power. So we get to have a film with John Stewart for this particular one, which I was very excited about, finally getting John Stewart in his own film. Of course, online there's been mixed reviews regarding it. A couple of them, after I watched it, I was like, I see. But of course, right now we have Teresa with us. So I'm going to start off. Teresa, what dislike for the series, for the movie?
I actually enjoyed it. As I mentioned in a previous previously when we got together, previous discussion, I don't generally do animation as far as superhero animation. I like animation, but for some reason the comic based superhero animation usually doesn't keep my attention.
Yes.
But I was surprised this one did. I think I followed the story pretty well, and I was entertained. I'm probably not as big a critic as some people, but
Okay.
I was happy to see him too. It's kind of interesting because I have a cousin named John Stewart,
Oh,
and
nice.
he's career Army, so
Oh, nice.
that was interesting.
Yes.
But yeah, and I learned about some of the characters that I had heard of and didn't really have too much background on, so that was cool.
Yes. Well, for me, I'm like you. I did enjoy it because it gave a different angle to their animated movies versus the ones I've seen before. And I really liked how they kind of showed how John Stewart became part of the
Green
becoming
Lantern
a
Corps.
Green Lantern and everything, and kind of going from there. So it was, I really enjoyed seeing how they kind of handled all of that with him. And for those that are not familiar with John Stewart, he was a discharged Marine sniper for the series. As far as you probably saw in the write-up, that he's at the crossroads of his life, being now a civilian, trying to figure out what he's going to do. And one which is only complicated when he gets granted the powers of the Green Lantern. And I for someone who, for myself, looking at how he was dealing with adapting, and a lot of people were kind of like, oh, they didn't like seeing him being portrayed that way. And I'm like, for me personally, being ex-military, have friends that are military, especially those who have fought in wars, they have that hard transition, dealing with their PTSD, trying to figure out being in their back in the civilian world, and trying to figure out, oh, it looks like Simone is having issues with her mic and camera, so hopefully she can get that worked out so she can join us.
Right.
But how did you feel like seeing him, doing that, also dealing with like the life within the city he was living in, everything at the very beginning, how we kind of see how John Stewart was at the very early on, and especially the part of him dealing with the police?
I think it, because these are all stories that are I don't want to say old, but they're existing stories. They've been around for a while. But I think the way that they portrayed him in this adaptation is very current. Um, and it kind of it really brought the story into what's happening now. He was obviously having some issues with PTSD, and they kind of showed how that translated into some issues with it looked like it was going to be issues with the police, but it kind of turned out to not being,
Mhm.
but they still were making some assumptions about him just from looking at him. And they kind of acted like they were doing him a favor by cutting him loose or whatever, because he was military and so highly decorated or whatever.
Yeah.
But it brought it into the present really,
Yes.
really well.
Yes. And I know people had an issue with that, but it made sense because, like, seeing, which we have seen in the news and stuff like that, like him being the only Black person, he's breaking up this situation of these two thugs about to kill a homeless person,
Right, for no
and,
reason.
but just because he seemed crazy, because he was talking about the world is going to end, all this stuff is going to happen, and they were like, hey, we told you to leave, so since you're not leaving, we're going to kill you. And he intervened. But what got me is there was two people fighting him, but yet they tased him instead of the two guys
Right,
that had weapons. They
right,
had weapons, and he was the only one fighting with his fist. And that was the part was like, oh yeah,
right.
y'all made it modern, huh?
Exactly. I mean, plucked from the headlines. They get there, and of course, their attention is on the Black dude.
Mm-hmm. And then it's like they're telling him, well, not get in trouble and all this other stuff. Like, they're trying to talk him like he's a little kid. And
Right,
then as soon as they get his ID from his pocket, they find out, oh, he's highly decorated. We don't want to cause issue because in the news, we can't have that. So we're gonna let you go, but don't do this again.
right. Don't stay out of trouble.
Exactly. And it's just like this highly decorated person that you see has this long list, but nothing on record of causing issues. But
Right.
all of a sudden he's there, and all of a sudden you let the two people who was causing issues run away while you focused on him.
Hmm.
So I like that fact that made it realistic. A lot of people did it, but it's like you said, a lot of these stories were comics written 30 20, 30 years ago.
Hmm.
So I like the fact they made it based on today's things, because it probably wouldn't have translated really well if they kept it like what really happened to him
Right.
back then in the comics. And then of course after that he goes home, and then there all of a sudden a spaceship comes crashing down. And of course, because of this is he gets his powers, whether he liked it or not. But
Right.
it was very fascinating that they were like, of course, he was in denial, but the fact is the Guardian knew his name, was like,
Hmm.
John Stewart, we've been looking for you.
Right.
Here, here you go. We're glad we finally found you. And he gets this ring stuck on his finger. I thought that was hilarious because the whole entire time he's just like,
Right. Just like, get this thing off me.
and which was hilarious and everything. And then of course he uh the ring, which the ring was funny to me
Hmm.
because he's talking to it and the ring is like, who are you talking to? And the and everything is like, look, if you're talking to me, then
Here's how you
call
need
me
to
the
say
ring.
it. Right. But if you step back even a little bit more, we were talking about how the police treated him, how they saw him, and then they even looked up his record or whatever, and so they see that he's a decorated war veteran and everything, but they still don't really treat him any better. It's like, he stay out of trouble. We're gonna cut you loose this time.
Yeah.
But it takes an alien. It takes somebody from outer space, a completely different species, to show him the respect that he probably deserved.
Yes.
They already knew John Stewart. They had done their research or whatever. They knew that he was worthy of
Yes.
this this mantle or whatever, that of this job, that even though he didn't want to do it to begin with, he was the one they were looking for. And this is,
Mm-hmm.
and then he couldn't take the ring off in the beginning until he started to see that he could do it you
Yes,
know
exactly.
so but it took an alien to respect him, and the humans don't respect him.
Exactly. And even though the alien died, and it was funny because even the ring was like, did the same thing, but a different perspective. Was like, you're John Stewart. You are that. He spit out everything about him, letting him
Right.
know, yeah, I know who you are too.
Right.
I may be an inanimate object, but I know who you are. And it was, I love that because for me, it gave an element, like you said, this alien and this object sees beyond just the surface and
Right.
who you are. And then of course he needed to find somebody who knew what this ring was doing and what about it, and it flew him all the way to the Justice League. And that situation was funny because he gets in there, he's let in on the ship, and first thing is they go right on the attack. I was
Right.
just like,
And I'm like, he got in. I mean, did y'all not consider that the ship let him in for a reason? They just automatically start
exactly,
kicking
the
his
whole
ass.
force field, he went right through, because you saw he went right on through the force field, came on in, he walked on through, no alarms went off or anything.
Right.
And then old girl was just like, okay, power on.
Right. It's like, who is this interloper?
Exactly. But then it really made him, even though he was denying it, he tapped in, which I caught on. Every item he got was something connected to the military. It was, he had his knives, he had his guns, he had a freaking Jeep.
Right.
He used whatever he remembered from the military, and he went right into, I call it military mode, because you are on the defense. I got to get what I need to do to defend myself.
Hmm.
But then, you end up having him and Green Arrow, both of them coming at him, finally capturing him. But then it was funny, after they captured him, it was like it dawned, wait, the ship let him in.
Right. No
I was just
alarms.
like, now y'all gonna think about that? But it was really, you had that element, and then of course they still was kind of suspect about him. But
Right.
then, even Green Arrow had to say, hey, he can't just take the ring from, another Green Lantern.
Right. Right.
the
Whose
ring,
ring do you have?
exactly, the ring will only go on the person who's worthy or of this and everything. So it was just like, it was another element of confirming he was worthy, because you could tell he beat himself up so much from the war scene that we saw earlier, that he
Right.
lost everybody in his unit. He was the only survivor, basically. Even though he got injured with the one guy attacking him, he got the knife through his hand. But it's like he was so guilt laden, which I have seen with other soldiers,
Right.
that they feel guilty being the only one that survived.
Mhm.
And so he was not seeing, he was just like, look, I don't need to be a part of no one else's military.
Right. Like, I got enough issues.
It was like, I'm still dealing with the other one that I just got out of. And of course, they finally get to the planet for Green Lantern. We find it destroyed. Most of, everybody is, you find them dead. We find um, and they're trying to figure out what happened. Of course, they get attacked by Hawk Girl.
Right.
She came out the gate. I
She
was
was
like, what is
hardcore too. Nobody's asking any questions.
Thank
It's
you.
like shoot first and ask questions later.
Thank you. Exactly. And I was just like, look, I know how people talk about Marvel people, but I was like, at least I knew, like, freaking Iron Man be like, hey, look, we got some questions.
Right.
And then they don't answer, or they decide to shoot. Oh, you're shooting us? Okay. We go and attack now.
Right.
But they all went straight on the attack. And I was like, no, like you said, questions later aspect. I'm like, so she's coming in swinging, which, she was, just swinging everything, taking everybody, trying to take everybody out. If she could have, she would have took their heads off. And
She was trying.
But then she found out, oh, they're not part of the group that attacked her planet and also attacked this planet. Oh, yeah, let's try to find out who did. But to her, it was in her head, based on the ship that arrived, it was their mortal enemy that attacked. And of course, I did like it that when John Stewart saw the video that was captured, he was like, how do you know it's really them? She's like, it's the ship. He was like, but how do you know it's really them? Which I like that aspect, but it was also in that same moment, he said something, and I was like, oh, that's the black side of him talking. And I was cracking up because I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was a typical, it was just like, but she was just like, I know it is, all this stuff. So then they, and that whole moment right there, it was just like, okay, for me, it was just like, why is he the only one? Like, look, and then you finally got Green Arrow was like, yeah, we probably need to. I don't always agree with it, but I agree with him.
Right. At this time.
Check this out and everything, because it may not be that, which was interesting. Also seeing, like, I'm not sure when John Stewart and Green Arrow met, if Green Arrow was older, because you're seeing this older Green Arrow, like, he's got the white beard,
the gray hair,
and I was just like, I haven't really got into those in the comics for DC. The DC, as far as I was like, it was Nubia,
right,
and that was basically it. But it was just like, did he meet? Did they meet? And of course, we're hoping Furious will join, because me and Teresa, like, we got comic questions.
Right, yeah.
But it was kind of interesting, him so much older than him and everything. But at the same time, seeing him older, I'm like, you should know, for dealing with being in the Justice League and doing your Green Arrow stuff, like, some of this stuff you should have intervened a little bit earlier.
Well, he was just he was still suspicious of him because he had his friend's ring,
Yeah, yeah,
and he still wasn't sure what happened to Hal.
exactly. Well, at the same time, John Stewart, I'm like, sir, give details. He literally was like, look, what happened was I was going home, the plane crashed, and then this ring flew on my finger. I'm like, you left out the whole part of the guy saying, I was looking for you. The ring
Right,
came off after he died. The ring was like, we've been looking for you. Red on my finger. He left all of that.
right. He's like, all I know is I got the ring.
Exactly. And of course, they're looking at him like, that sounds suspect.
Right. Especially, they get there and all the Guardians are dead, and
Yes.
so yeah.
So it didn't help matters any. And of course, with that scene and seeing everything the way it was and everything, and of course with John's first time being on the planet, when he saw where the Guardians are usually stayed at,
Hmm.
and you where it looked like the Green Lantern symbol, but it was destroyed from what happened. And he literally was like, this looks like somewhere important right there.
Hmm.
and all, but it was like, seeing all of that and seeing like you said, all these Green Lanterns just completely, floored everything else. And then right when they in the midst of that, here comes this beam coming down, like reminds me of those little laser beams that you see in the movies when it's like a war and they're shooting it from the satellite.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden this man appears who is a hero from the other planet who was attacking Hawk Girl's planet. So she goes on a rampage again.
Right. No questions.
She just knows, I know who you are. I know your people.
Right.
I know your people. So
We're enemies, so
exactly.
let's fight.
And so he's confused because he's like, well, last time I checked, this is what was going on. And she was like, well, that was like, 40 years ago. And then we find out he's been beamed everywhere with this little beam.
Right. Just kind of randomly.
Yes, just randomly. He'll be there for a little moment and beam. He was the DC version of Beam Me Up Scotty without asking. But it was kind of interesting him, he's just ragged, you could tell, like, I guess the beam doesn't allow him time to shave or anything.
Right.
He looked like he'd been stranded on a desert island for some time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of interesting seeing that happen. And then of course, with John saying, and Green Arrow agreeing with him, we got to get answers. Let's go to the source, find out, if this really, what's really going on. So they, travel on to Hawk Girl's. Oh yeah, they travel to Hawk Girl's planet after that.
And even before that, though, when they're where the Guardians usually are, and I need Furious because I need to ask him if
about the statues.
Well, about the statues, but also with the little recharger thing that John needed to recharge his ring, and the oath, the Green Lantern's oath. I need to ask Furious, how odd is it that Green Arrow knows the whole oath?
Well, I don't know if it was because for me, I took it because he was best friends with the previous Green Lantern of Earth, Hal, because he kept talking about Hal, and then they saw that big behind statue of him.
Right.
And they had a whole automated thing talking about he is the best Green Lantern of all time. I was like,
Right.
in the whole in all the universes. I'm like,
And John is like, I know I don't want to do this now. Please take this ring off of me.
exactly. He was, and it was slowly coming off. Like once he got there, he was just like, "Uh-oh, it's a little loose. It's a little
Hmm.
loose now." And then finally, after he saw that, he was able to get it off, put it on top of the little lantern, and
Right.
then he gets attacked.
Right.
At all. But yeah, and then of course they talked about what's his name? He was the deflector.
Right. I can't
Can't
remember his name now.
I got to look it up. He's got pink skin. And now that was one I did know, because I do know that from, even though I didn't read in the comics, I was familiar with him, that he was
Mhm.
part of the Green Lanterns. He deflected, got the yellow ring, and
Yeah.
he tapped into that side. But it was like, and it was funny because they were like, oh, they left that out the history lesson, talking about him deflecting, because they have a statue there, but they don't talk about him deflecting. Ancestral, that's it, ancestral. And I had to Google it, but ancestral. But yeah, so it was like sinestro. But yeah, seeing that whole thing of all the statues, which
Mhm.
also made me, what y'all want to ask Furious, is like, do you have to have a certain status to be able to get a statue in there? Because there was a few statues, and they had a good number of statues, but it wasn't like everybody was in
Right.
there. So I'm like, what was the prestige you have to be, or was it you got a statue if you had a prestige and you were declared dead? Because Hal was declared dead.
Good point.
Sinestro was basically considered dead and everything. So I'm like, is this something that is moralizing? Really, that I wanted to ask him. So anybody who is watching, if you know the answer, please comment. Feel
Right.
free to engage, because if you know the DC comics, the actual comics, and you can answer some of these questions that me and Teresa has, please feel free to jump in, because I have no clue. But then they get on. But that was also a question I wanted to ask Fierce. The plane, it was on fire. It was all kind of stuff. And then as soon as he comes back to show the plane to Green Arrow, it's brand spanking new.
Mhm.
So I'm
Yeah,
like, does
it
it, once the ring goes to a new master, it go ahead and resets itself, or like Green Arrow says, have those nanobots and decided to fix everything up while he was gone and be ready when they get
yeah,
back? I was like,
it
I
might have
got
been like a
questions.
like an auto repair type thing.
And it's like, even the movies I have seen, that when they have something like that, it takes a minute. It doesn't get fixed that quickly. It takes a while before it is fixed and everything. So it was really interesting how it all was like, all right, auto reset, okay. And of course, like you said, John, initially I will be honest, like Green Arrow, I was looking at him kind of side-eyed, because I was like, I figured he would know the whole pledge, because he will hear it from his house saying it all the time. But I'm like, dude knew how to operate the plane. He was telling me, oh, you need to do this, you have the
Right.
ring to do this. I was like,
He knew everything. He knew that he needed the lantern to recharge the ring, and he knew the whole oath. So I just thought that
yeah.
was interesting.
So initially I was looking at him like, sir, do you have something to do with this? Because I was like, you know a little too much about the Green Lanterns and everything, but you didn't know squat about Hawk Girl when she showed up. So I'm like, okay. But, of course, got Hawk Girl to agree. They fly to her planet to kind of get some answers about things and everything. And then, of course, they find out while they are there that the signature for the plane that they find out throughout history of incidents had the same signature but had a different look. So it looked like somebody had been changing the outside of the plane, but it had the same signature for the plane. So it's been the same plane that was causing literally caused this whole civil war that's been going on for decades between Hawk Girl's planet and this other planet. And then we also see the story of what happens to Hal. He's helping with this peace thing with the beam. He ends up getting blown in the scene, and then one planet gets transported to a whole nother universe,
Right.
and end up changing the whole atmosphere of the planet and everything. Kills
So
everybody on
kills
the planet.
everybody. Mm-hmm.
So they fly to Hawk Girl's planet, which is in a different, not in its original universe, and they, they, like I said, find out about this plane, but then but the part that got me was when they decided to fly to the guy that to the enemy of Hawk Girl's planet. I can't remember the planet's name, but every time they met somebody of that species, they instantly asked if Hawk Girl was a prisoner.
Right.
She was
assumed.
not
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. She was. Yeah. She didn't like that.
She was like, I
I am
am
no prisoner.
And then anytime she said anything, they automatically deemed it that she was lying, and they were like, what you're saying. And it really got me because especially with the part, they see him, they were like, he was supposed to be dead.
Right.
Then they scan his body, find out he is who he is, but still it was one of those like, look, this is what's going on. And they were like, I don't know. It's like, dude's been gone for a whole century. But now you're still like, I don't know. I still want to destroy the other planet.
Right.
And all people. Because I want to end this war. We're like, well, we're trying to tell you how to end this war. It is not what you think it is. And so that was fascinating. And then, of course, they find the planet where the signal is coming from for where the plane was going. They go to this odd place in the atmosphere. Of course, they get inside, and they end up fighting Sinestro and his crew and everything. And
trying to stop that signal. That's
exactly. And then they get knocked clean out. They get put into jail, and then
right.
They find out Hal is right there.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we see the teary-eyed reunion between him and Green Arrow and everything. But at the same time, I don't know if you went through this, but when I saw Hal show up, I was like, did he get blown to bits?
Right. He was there because he was protecting the planet that got beamed into the other planet's atmosphere.
Exactly. And when they showed the whole scene, he literally made a crater in the other planet when he got beamed down. And I'm like, sir.
Right. But I guess the Sinestro I don't know. He got put back together some kind of way.
So I was kind of looking at him like, is this really him at that moment? Because I was just like, I don't know. Because I was like, Sinestro's known to, do all this stuff. I'm like, is that really him, or is that someone undercover? Right. I wondered.
But I was suspicious. I didn't know how, it could not be him because, I don't know all the backstories and stuff. But of course, I was suspicious from the beginning because how is the ring around, and the Guardians are obviously didn't, well, yeah, the Guardians obviously didn't know
Yeah.
that Hal was still alive or whatever, because they bestowed the ring on
Yep.
somebody else.
They had to find
So,
somebody else. Exactly.
right.
So I was just like, yeah, I was looking at him like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah. You
So of
know something's
course
up.
they get him. They escape and they take off with Hal to go find, get some answers. And then Sinestro end up overhearing them about the plan of destroying the other planet with the beam. So then he jumps on the opportunity to get a hold of the beam with his crew. So now they got to go try to stop him, and they go and try to convince the other planet to let them in so they can try to get them to stop what they're doing.
Right.
Which, well, the fascinating part was like one was that one guy that knew him, had his plane was completely blown, all about to blow up. They helped reroute the power to keep it going so he can, and they moved him so he can escape. And what he do? He hops in, takes off, and crashes into. And then Hot Girl talk about that is a warrior's death,
Right.
dying,
Yeah.
and I was just like,
Because the ship couldn't, I mean, it was just a hull basically.
yeah.
He said the ship couldn't do anything. There were no defenses or whatever. And he was like, "Oh, well, you know, do what I can."
But they gave him the leadway to go ahead and fly. They had him that he could have flew on, went on
Right.
home. No,
Right.
he went in and died. Like, I was just like, okay. Uh,
He had to have
but
his warrior's death, like like the Asgardians have to get into Valhalla.
y'all, yeah.
I guess
But
he was trying
at
to get
least
into
they
his
knew they went into
Valhalla.
Valhalla. They just wanted to die a hero's death. I'm like, so y'all not going, y'all don't have anything, y'all go anywhere. Y'all just die. Okay. Okay. I couldn't live on that planet, but all right.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, so then now we fast forward to they get to that planet. Of course, the guy has to convince them that yes, he's one of them, and he's not dead. They get
Right.
in
It's
there.
me.
He convinced his other friend, which we end up finding out the person who's making this beam is the father of his wife that passed away.
Right.
And what got me was, oh boy, says, you're so focused on getting revenge, but you haven't found your granddaughter. I was like, so your granddaughter's been missing for 10 years and you haven't looked for her nowhere.
He's busy trying to, he has his own agenda.
I was like, at least try to find the baby. I was like, where is she? And so I was just like, okay. And then but oh boy was like, nope, he's gonna get his revenge. He's gonna do all this. And then he was like, we got proof to show you that the other planet didn't do it. Convinced them to beam them over. They gave the proof, but oh boy was just like, yeah, I'm doing this for my daughter who died
Right.
because it's their fault they died. And we're like, no, we got proof. They had nothing to do with it. That was not even their plane.
He was like,
He,
"Okay, but it's
I'm still gonna blow them up.
it's just the principle of the thing at this point."
Exactly. It's like, oh, you can give me all the evidence as you want to show that they didn't do it. I'm still gonna blow up the planet.
Right.
I was just like, okay. I was like, that sounds about human.
Right.
But that was really interesting on that aspect. But then, of course, now after that, they're on the whole thing of trying to stop Sinestro, because then they make their way in there, and boom, we get hit with where everybody got freaking mad. We find out Hal is a sleeping agent.
Right.
we find out he is part of Team Yellow. Not only did they try to recruit him, we found out Sinestro was like, hey, I'm going to turn you into one of us, put that little creature down his darn throat. I was just like, you didn't try to spit it back up? But he was like, ooh, the power. It made me realize things. But then after that, Sinestro thought he was going to have him report to him, and he ended up being his master.
Right.
Because
Right.
he was able to take the green rings of all the people who died on Green Lantern's planet and use the yellow power together. So now we see him go ultimate loco.
Right.
And he was like, I don't care who I kill and everything. I'll kill my best friend. I'll kill all of y'all. We're gonna destroy these planets.
Right.
And everything.
Whatever it takes.
Exactly. And so it was so funny. And then, of course, online people were losing their shit because they were just like, how no? That's not, yeah. And I was just like, I can't wait for Furious. I'm gonna be like, Furious? Did that happen in the comments? Because if it did, I would be like, ha ha. But my whole aspect with it was like, I don't know for you. For me, that whole aspect with him was kind of like you said, a nod to kind of modern times of like the oppression of these other races and stuff, colonization causing these pitting one race against each other. He is the mastermind of everything. And then he doesn't care about friends, whoever it is. And, it gave that kind of nod to the modern times of like with colonization and everything else of how different races are pitted against each other and stuff. But people did not, the keyboard warriors did not like that. They made the real Green Lantern into that. No.
So I guess it didn't happen like that in the comics.
It may have, because a lot of those keyboard warriors had issues about the mantle being passed on to Falcon, and they were like, "No, our Captain America," but that happened in the comics.
Right.
Captain
So
America
why are y'all
passed it
so
on.
surprised? You knew it was gonna happen. You just hoped it wouldn't.
Or a lot of them just never read the comics and they just didn't know.
Yeah.
And but I kind of felt like this was the same aspect, but on the DC side, I have a feeling that this did happen. They just didn't like it and didn't like the fact that DC made it happen. And just like they didn't like how Captain America gave up the shield and passed it on to Falcon. So, but at that moment with him, that's when we saw that John Stewart realized who he was, who the kind of person he was, both as a soldier, but as what he could be as a Green Lantern also, and tapped into his power.
Right.
So which I love that scene of the two of them fighting.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing was just like a series of trials for him, and lessons for him to learn that, he would rather wield the power, or, he'd rather use the power to help protect the other people, as opposed to giving it up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like the fact that he finally acknowledged that, he accept the power, and, and it kind of reminded me of like when they're on the plane, he's doing all those tests that the Green Lanterns have to do. And they're like, and the Green Arrow was like, why are you doing that? I thought you didn't want to be a Green Arrow.
Right. Thought you didn't want
he was
the
like,
ring.
well, I got to be prepared. I don't even know how to use this ring. No one's telling me how to use this ring.
Right.
And so, he ended up putting it to work. But at the same time, you saw that Green Arrow had his own trial because this is his best friend.
Right.
He sees him go bad. He he still is looking for the good in him and hoping
Right.
to convince him, but had to finally realize it's not. And then, of course, both the Green Lanterns and, of course, the Justice League don't believe in killing. No killing,
Exactly.
that's bad. So you
Exactly.
saw how Green Arrow was starting to look at Hal, because he had no problem. He was like, kill, and he was just like,
Right. He was just whipping out the,
exactly.
no
And Hal was
problem.
looking at him like, he was looking at Green Lantern was, not Green Lantern, but Green Arrow was looking at Hal like, Hal, are you all
Right.
right?
Exactly. Exactly. Because he was just picking people off. No problem.
Exactly. He was killing them, no questions asked. He was just like,
Mhm.
hey, we needed to take them out. If we don't, they're going to take us out. I was like, I understand the reasoning, but dude, don't you want to
Right.
get information?
Like the ring told John to begin with, lethal force is not authorized.
Was, yep. And that was something he had to deal with because he kept getting triggered from back when he was in the military, that he
Hmm.
had to do that because he was a soldier,
Right.
and he had to battle those feelings. But then when he realized, this is a different type of defending, and I can do that, and that is not in my nature. I was
Hmm.
trained to do it, but it's not in my nature.
Right.
And how embraced his nature. I'll get you a
Exactly.
whole different level. I was just like, sir, you going on Novo and everything. You was like, I'll kill my little follower if I need to. I'll kill them all. I'll
Hmm.
make new followers. We're gonna destroy everything. But yeah, then it ended up being his best friend had to end up killing him with his own arrow
Right.
and everything.
To save John,
Mhm.
because weren't they fighting at
Yes.
that moment? And
But
he was like this close to getting the best of him because he had just gotten his ring.
yes.
He had all the other ones, and he had just gotten his off. So
Yes.
Green Arrow had to save him.
Exactly. Because he was still powerful with just the one ring on,
Hmm.
even though John had all of those other rings on his fingers and stuff. But it was definitely one of those that he was like, hey, I have to live with this. This is not yours to deal with. I have to live with this. We had to do it because he wasn't listening to reason.
Right. And
It,
he had come. I guess he had finally really come to terms with the fact that that wasn't really him.
yes. Yeah.
Although I did wonder, it was that parasite thing that Sinestro gave him.
Thank you.
I did wonder why they didn't like at least try or examine the idea of maybe if we get the parasite out.
Yeah.
But I
And I'm
guess,
wondering if they even knew about it, but it's like one of those, like, if they scanned his body, you know,
but he
was
told
there
him,
too?
didn't he tell him when Hal was telling
Yeah.
him,
Mm-hmm.
what happened? Or
Yes,
maybe it was the Sinestro guy. Somebody was telling the story, and
exactly.
they were like, he took in the parasite or whatever,
Yeah,
and that's what made him turn to the dark side, if you will.
exactly. Which
Um,
would have made me like, once they heard the story before they even got to that place, was like, get the plane to scan him and be like, where's the parasite? Like
right.
you said, and try to see if they can remove it,
Hmm.
if it's removable without causing death or something.
Yeah. But I guess maybe at that point, he was about to get the best of John. They maybe felt like they didn't have any other recourse.
Yeah. So it was one. It's definitely one of those that also made me wonder if how was that really how, or was that, like you said, the parasite speaking
Hmm.
and giving him those thoughts.
Right. Or really animating his body. At that point, Hal might have really been gone.
Mm-hmm. Because he took one heck of a beam. He was beamed so hard, all his clothes came off. I was just like, so he just butt ass naked, huh?
Right.
But he's still alive. I was like, that's okay, we went into anime world, like when they get beat all the clothes off of them and they still alive. I'm like, okay. And I thought that was hilarious. But my favorite part is like when you find out after he went to the dark side, he's still butt behind naked, going to the planet, to his own planet of the Green Lantern Corps, butt behind naked and tearing things up naked. Not didn't even think about taking somebody else's clothes.
Naked, right?
I was just like, okay.
He had bigger fish to fry.
Exactly. I was like, so you didn't decide to put on clothes until you went to you decided to pretend you went to jail. I was like, okay. But that was really interesting. And then also seeing like the bond begin to form with Green Arrow, because even though you could tell that John understood what Green Arrow was feeling and everything, so he was understanding and everything. And of course, they get back to Earth, and then it was interesting because also Hawk Girl talking about that now she's gonna have to be the protector of her planet and stuff as a Green Lantern. So I was like, did she get a ring? Because I know the rings flew off. And I was like, did she get a ring? Because she said she's going to be a protector of, like, with the Green Lanterns for her planet. I'm like, okay. Because I was like, they didn't focus on her hand, so I didn't see if she got one or not. But I was like, okay, interesting. And then, of course, you see them go off and everything. But it was definitely one that it made me kind of wonder because, if they are going to dive deeper on the yellow ring side, because I do know the yellow is a forbidden ring, and then there's other rings out there other than the Green Lantern ring. They have the yellow, there's purple, there's a purple ring, and then I forgot the other colors, but there's other colors out there. So I'm wondering if this is the start of us learning about the other rings that are out there, since now we found yellow. I don't know if the other colors are bad or good. Only one I remember being bad is yellow before I saw this movie. So I'm wondering if the other colors, because there's blue, there's orange, there's yellow, there's green. I believe there's white also. People watching, please comment and
let us know, right?
I know y'all watching. I appreciate y'all watching, but yeah, we need some help because it's just the two of us trying to talk about something that we have not read the comics on. And hopefully later on we can, especially later on next month, where we probably would get these answers from Furious then. Please definitely tune in next month. We are having a session on September 8th. We're going to be talking about Marvel versus DC. I can't wait for this episode, especially with the news from DC that has happened over this past week with Warner Brothers. Ooh-wee, ooh-wee. I cannot wait. Please tune in for that, because we're going to get down and dirty talking about why Marvel versus DC and all the elements in between. Because my goodness, these announcements that just happened this last week, and all I gotta say is Warner Brothers, if y'all get rid of HBO Max,
right?
That was the best thing that they ever came up with. Because I love HBO Max. I love, because it was a good compliment to Disney that you had your DC movies, but you also have on HBO Max, you have Studio Ghibli on there. You have all these other brands. Nickelodeon is on there. All of these other brands that are on there, and you get all these movies that, if you don't go to the theater to go see, you get to see it within a month's time on there, or sometimes it
Right.
gets put on there the same time it goes to theater,
Right.
especially during the pandemic. So I'm like, when they talked about getting rid of HBO Max, I was like,
That just doesn't make sense to me. It seems like, I mean, see, well, what I am hoping still that they'll decide to just push the Discovery stuff to HBO Max.
mm-hmm. That's what I'm hoping so too. Because one thing I give DC, and I know we're going to dive into this more next month, DC is great on the animation side, but their other elements have been horrible overall. And Marvel, I will say, the MCU kicks butt, but their
Hmm.
animated ones,
Not so much.
yeah. And kind of like how you talked about, like certain animations do not is not your forte.
Right. It just doesn't
And
catch my attention.
exactly. And there are some out there, like for myself, I can't get into it. I will sit, everybody will tell me, oh, it's okay. And I'm like, what is going on? And I just can't enjoy it, or I'm asked, or my analytical self is asking too many questions, because I'm like, what it no, what oxygen? I know they can't breathe, but okay. But it's elements like that, and there's certain animations that I adore, like Studio Ghibli. That is Disney tier animation storytelling right there. Um, I finally got a couple people to watch Studio Ghibli. I'm like, okay, depending on the kind of stories you like, will determine which of his stories you will like.
Mhm.
And I will tell people from that, because I'm like, whether it's, you know, if you like cutesy, you're gonna have My Neighbor Totoro. But if you like, tying into environmental, fighting the man, okay, Princess Mononoke. It's like all those elements is like Japanese animation has tiers just like regular TV has. Like if you like horror, there's a whole horror genre of animation. And then you got, action, comedy, all that kind of stuff. So uh the sad part is Japanese animation has that. We're barely getting that in the US animation. That it's either really kiddie like, or we have these kind of adult kind of kiddie like animations, but we don't know which one we want to be, but we're going to keep it on the kids network.
Mhm.
So it's one of those, the US animation doesn't quite have their tiers like Japanese animation has. And I I could see they're starting to mirror a lot of the Japanese animation of what they have, but we're not there. But like I said, DC animation, this one, even though people had, they love the How, the Green Lantern, but I'm sorry. This, I do know the comics. The mantle gets passed on to John. So
Right.
whether it happened like this or not, it got passed on. So
Right. So
I'm
it
sorry
shouldn't be a
you're upset.
surprise.
But it's definitely one that I didn't like you said, I did enjoy it. I had I was suspicious about a of course, Green Arrow. I was suspicious about Green of How also, as I was watching it, but How did live up to the suspicions. But I'm very curious to see how the relationship will continue to go between Green Arrow and John Stewart, and
Mhm.
then also Hawk Girl, which I with seeing Legends of Tomorrow having Hawk Girl in there, I'm wondering if the animated world will bring some of that into theirs, because I love the fact when they brought Hawk Girl into that world, and then you had Hawk Man Guy,
You got me.
the male version of Hawk Girl. He showed up in there, and I'm wondering if we're going to see a part of that in this world, because I do know that they were the last of their kind, because we saw it in Legends of Tomorrow. Right now, it seems like she's the only one, and I'm wondering when she's going to meet him to kind of and stuff. So I'm hoping that they will show that in the animated version, because I will really like to see how their dynamics will continue to grow past this movie. But of course, we're at the top of the hour. Any final words you have about the movie, Teresa?
I will just say that, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised, because often the animation doesn't keep my attention, but this one, it must have held my attention because my memory's so bad. I forget everybody's name. I forget what just happened. But I,
Is
but
that yours? Because mine too. I was like, I know there's John. I know Green
right.
Arrow. I don't know his real name. I know he's Green Arrow.
Oliver
Girl.
Queen. I knew that.
Exactly.
But yeah, I remembered some people's names, and I even picked out, oh yeah, that's Martian Manhunter. So
Yes.
it obviously did keep my attention, and it kind of tied together some things that I had heard of before. So I was pleasantly surprised by it, and I hope they do some more, and to
Yes.
tie up some more ends for me.
Mm-hmm. Same here. And I also kind of wonder, because we had the two, the two of them, like you said, we had from the Justice League. They didn't go with Green Arrow because one had to stay to protect the Earth, the other one had to go elsewhere. And I'm like, all right, when will we see them come back to?
Right. When do we
I
get
was
their
like, we
story?
see them not now after that.
No, and I mean, they didn't even call their names.
Exactly. I
They
would have
didn't
thought
call
they
their
would have
names
checked
at
in.
all.
I
Because
would have thought
I
they
think
would
I was
called in.
reading something else, and that's where I got, oh, it was the credits. I was reading the credits, and trying to see who the who voice actors were and everything. And I was like, oh yeah, that was Martian Manhunter, you know?
Yes. But my whole thing is like, all right, they came back to Earth. I would have thought Martian Manhunter, he would have made an appearance towards the end, because he basically was watching over Earth while they went to go handle that. I'm like, he not gonna make another appearance, and we
N-
got old
No other
girl.
appearances. They didn't call their names, nothing.
It's like, thank you for protecting the Earth. They just knew something was coming. It was taken care of, and they were like, all right, John, we apologize. None of that. So I'm
Right.
like, I can't wait until the next movie to kind of see how the dynamic will be with John, because it's like, yeah, y'all tried to kill me, and yeah,
Right. You didn't even ask who I was. You just tried to put the smack down on me.
exactly.
So yeah.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, it was definitely one of those. I would love to see how it continues to go. Oh, so Amy Chibi is asking. She said a bit of a, hopefully she a random question. Do you wish Blue Marvel will appear at some point in the Marvel MCU? Yes, I do, because they have talked about like having let's see, what's his name, from the alternate universe for Superman, um bringing him into the DC world, which I hope they do. But Blue Marvel, I'm like, yeah, he needs to come on into MCU, because right now, how beautiful that they got everything planned out for the last 10 years.
Right?
It's like everything is starting to connect more. At the beginning, we weren't seeing the vision of why all these different movies and TV series were happening.
Right.
But now we're connecting. We're seeing the potential of the X-Men joining because of seeing the second Doctor Strange movie, and now we're seeing the connection into with Miss Marvel and everything else. So I'm hoping maybe in phase 6 we're going to see that, because they haven't announced everything in phase 6 yet. We have only seen the announcement for the full phase 5. So I'm hoping that we will see him in phase 6, because now that we're seeing more discussion about the multi-dimension, of course, I can't wait until later on this year when we get to see the next Into the Spider-Verse Part 2 movie. Can't wait for that. So I think as they dive more into the multiverse, I think with the connection of diving more and we're getting more of that, I think that's going to allow us to start getting. We'll eventually see Blue Marvel, because with him being part of a different universe, I think with all this diving into the multiverse, and they're starting to learn more, and these different battles and things are going to be coming up over in phase 5. I'm hoping we'll see him in phase 6, but the way Marvel is playing stuff out, I'm very excited about how everything is playing out and connecting and stuff. And this phase 6, I can't wait. And I'm going to be right in the theater. I am going to, soon as I know I'm going to see if I can get enough people here in Georgia. We're going to go do a screening of Spider-Verse. We're going to buy out a whole theater.
If they keep it the way it is now, it's only $100 to do it, to get a theater. We could do that.
I'm hoping so, because right now, when I last checked, they said they're not doing any bookings for November yet. They won't do it until after the end of September. So I'm gonna check back and like, hey, can I do an auditorium, your smallest auditorium, and then see how many people are interested in going, and telling everybody how much it is a ticket, and let's go and have our own theater and just take it all in, nerd out together.
I'm in.
Exactly. But Amy, Chibi, thank you for tuning in. Definitely continue. Join us on the 8th of September when we talk about Marvel versus DC. We'll love to hear your questions and your comments also, as we talk about the two different cinema universes. And we'll probably dive into the animated universes too for both of them, but we're definitely going to be diving in with Teresa, Furious, and Simone, and also Malachi. And with Malachi and Furious having the ultimate comic book knowledge. I have my comic book knowledge right here. Furious and Malachi's is like up here. So I know we're going to really dive into the differences between the two of those. So definitely be on the lookout for the links to join us for those and everything. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. Next week, our episodes, our 7 p.m. episode, we're going to have with a special guest from... if my thing wants to come up. She is with Black Lily Consulting. They are an organization that works on different elements from education and advocacy for marginalized communities and so much more. So we're very excited to talk to her and see what they are doing and what nonprofit organizations they are working with for equality and all the stuff that you can hire them for to bring to your company. And then our 8:30 episode, we are having with our talent development series that we have every month with Sue Ann from Kapwa. We are having the discussion on individual development. We constantly hear about, setting development goals within your company, but we're going to dive into individual development, not only professionally, but personally, that we're having with that. And we're going to have our panel guests with Sue Ann that's going to dive into that. So definitely tune in, engage in the comments, ask your questions, and such, that you can get some insight to help you on your own development. So definitely tune in next week at 7 and 8:30 p.m. both on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch for Moana Nui Podcast. So everyone, thank you again for joining us. Teresa, thank you for being part of it. Thank you for holding it down for our other two panelists. We had one with technical issues, the other one stuck at work. Ooh, poor thing. But everyone, thank you for joining us this evening. You have a great evening, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then, when they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves the Republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand,
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. The work of all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if you put Hawaii into perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course, versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course, cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. The work of all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.